ومع الأسف نشهد اليوم حرب روسية أوكرانية قد
Ukrainian
تكلف
war,
العالم
whose
خسائر
estimated losses globally are expected to reach about $2.8 trillion, with rising fears of a nuclear war. Today, we are also witnessing the highest inflation rates in years, with the highest food prices we have seen in 60 years. In the past 10 years, we have witnessed increasing technological developments. We have witnessed the largest migration waves, migration from the physical world to the digital and virtual world, with more than half of the world's population on social media. Approximately 4 billion people have migrated to this world. When it comes to data, we have witnessed an increase in its production 5,000% in comparison to the last decade, and it plays a major role in shaping politics and economy, as well as in the services provided by governments. If we wish to print the content of the Internet since its inception, we would need more than 300 billion pages, compared to a 70 billion pages for all books recorded since the dawn of history. As we have repeatedly stressed and will continue to stress, he who owns the data owns the future. On the scientific level, we have succeeded in reducing the time needed for DNA sequencing from 13 years to less than 1 hour, in addition to reducing the cost of the process from $100 million to less than $600. I expect that within the coming period, we will face a biological revolution whose importance is expected to parallel the current technological revolution. Ladies and gentlemen, let's listen together to this symphony. This piece of music is the 10th symphony, which Beethoven did not complete. It was completed by artificial intelligence through analyzing his genius and copying it after approximately 200 years after his death. Ladies and gentlemen, artificial intelligence and the emergence of new applications such as ChatGPT and others will give us skills that we never imagined we could have, and will affect many sectors as well. If we look at one sector alone, the media sector, for example, there are international organizations using artificial intelligence to write approximately 30,000 press releases monthly. It is expected within the coming years that more than 90% of the press releases, op-eds, articles, and news analysis will be produced by AI and not by journalists or writers. This alone is only in media. So what about other sectors, such as consulting services, research, translation, story writing, law, medicine, education?
خلال الأعوام القادمة. فما هي أهم التحولات التي ستغير مستقبل العالم
the future of the world over the coming years? The first shift is climate change. If the refugee crisis that we are experiencing today is mainly caused by politics, then the refugee crisis in the future will be caused by climate change. It is expected to have more than 1 billion refugees by 2050. The climate change will cost the world $23 trillion, and the impact of the climate change will extend to reach all aspects of life. Sustainability will be key for determining cooperation among governments, deals with companies, and the attractiveness of societies. Due to the importance of this global issue, the UAE announced that 2023, this year, will be the year of sustainability, and within its role in addressing this global issue, it will host COP28 to combat this global issue. The second shift, the new economic landscape. The world will witness a shift in the global economic landscape. For example, the E7 countries, such as Brazil, China,
مجموعة الدول السبع الجي 7 بحلول 2050. نحن نتجه نحو خارطة اقتصادية
economic landscape with new blocks having strong economic and global influence that will divide the world into different financial and economic systems. They will also force governments to make decisive economic, technological, and geopolitical choices. The third shift is population growth. If we want to anticipate the future of cities, we should look at newborn children today. On 15th November 2022, the world population passed the threshold of 8 billion people, and it is expected to reach approximately 9.7 billion by 2050. Today, out of every 1,000 newborns worldwide, most of them are in Asia and Africa. This means the concentration of new mega cities will be in the developing countries in Asia and Africa at a rate of 86%. This is a huge challenge for these countries and an opportunity if governments can make use of their human resources. The fourth shift, we will witness a radical change in the concepts of illiteracy and skills. An illiterate will be the person who cannot deal and live with AI techniques. In the next decade, we will have tens of millions of vacancies due to the lack of suitable skills in the potential candidates. For governments, unemployment will not only necessitate creating jobs, but also introducing the appropriate technical skills and capabilities that would qualify individuals for future jobs. This radical shift in the concept of illiteracy and skills requires a corresponding shift or even a complete transformation in the educational system worldwide to restructure the concepts of education and upskilling. The fifth shift, artificial intelligence, determining the position and future of governments. Either there will be proactive governments adopting AI techniques or underdeveloped governments that will live alone in a world that resembles prehistoric ages. The current percentage of government readiness for adopting AI globally is less than 50%. How many governments have an agenda for AI adoption? How many governments have actually worked to implement such an agenda? Governments' adoption of AI technologies has become inevitable. It is no more an option. Many governments have lost the battle of trust to companies because of their delay in adopting the appropriate technologies. Ladies and gentlemen, the next global conflict will not be geopolitical. It will be techno-political. It will be a conflict over technology and AI. The power of countries will not be determined by their political and military capabilities alone, but by how early they have adopted the various applications of modern technologies and AI. It is this technology that will give countries their economic and military and scientific power. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, I used to say we are in the first second of the first minute of the first hour of the first day of the first year of technological development. Today, I can say that we have moved to the second of the first minute of the first hour of the first day of technological development with the massive use of artificial intelligence. Finally, I would like to thank you all, and I am pleased and it's my pleasure to invite my dear friend Professor Klaus Schwab, founder and chairman of the World Economic Forum, to share us his view of the state of the world.
Your Highnesses, Your Excellencies, esteemed participants, Minister Mohamed Kakawi, Chairman of the World Government Summit. It's a great pleasure to be here and to congratulate you, Minister. It's the 10th anniversary, and the World Economic Forum is very proud to have been a founding partner of this event. Ladies and gentlemen, today people may ask, what is the purpose of such events? In a fragmented world, to come together, to reflect about the future, to see the new developments which you, Minister, described so well, is absolutely essential. There are some people who claim we are now in a deglobalizing world. But actually, I would say we have to re-globalize this world. We have to make sure that we strengthen cooperation because, as it was mentioned, we are faced with issues which are of existential importance for humankind. Our common future is at stake. When we finished our annual meeting in Davos just 3 weeks ago, there was a lot of discussion about what some people call the capability of humankind to cope with so many challenges at the same time. There was the world of multi-crisis. But actually, we are not in a world of multi-crisis. We are in a world where simultaneously we are caught in deep, systematic transformation processes. There's a difference between a crisis and a transformation. If you manage a crisis, you want to come back to the original point as fast as possible. You want to correct the situation. But in a transformational situation, you have to manage change, to come out at the end of the transformation in a better situation compared to the beginning. The world at the moment, as I just mentioned, faces many of those transformational processes, systemic processes, structural changes. I just want to mention three. The first, of course, is the economic transformation. with two main catalytic factors and forces, the energy transformation. Just imagine, in 2050, the world will have the double of its present GDP, even if we grow with only 3% per year. It will have 10 billion of inhabitants, but it still needs energy. And we have at the same time to reach the objectives of the Paris Agreement, to decarbonize, to reach zero carbon emissions, or net zero as it is called. But it's not just this transformation, this energy transformation, which will cost, the estimates are 3 trillion a year. It's not only the only factor being pushing this economic transformation. I think we should not underestimate the big reshaping of global supply chains, which is just happening now. Now, the political transformation. Minister, you mentioned it. We are moving from a world more or less dominated by one superpower into a patchwork of a multi-power world, with one superpower, one competing superpower, aspiring superpowers like India, middle powers, but also rogue states, companies who have become global powers, technology companies, social media. So we will move in a very fragmented world, and hopefully not too fractured world, where we have to make sure that the rule of law is not trampled with the feet, but where we maintain the necessary framework for global cooperation. And I see Dr. Ngozi, who at least in the trade field tries so hard to maintain a global rules-based order. The third transformation which we have to face is what you just mentioned, Minister. I wrote in 2015 the book, The Fourth Industrial Revolution, and I mentioned 23 or 24 technologies which will change the world, like crypto and so on and so on. The book was considered science fiction. All those technologies have become reality, and there are new technologies. And I would say we are in the second minute, or whatever we want to call. We are at the beginning. When you look at technology transformation, it usually takes place in the terms of an S-curve. And we are just now where we move into the exponential phase. And I agree, artificial intelligence, but not only artificial intelligence, but also the metaverse, near space technologies, and I could go on and on, synthetic biology. Our life in 10 years from now will be completely different, very much affected, and who masters those technologies in some way will be the master of the world. Now, what does it mean for governments and for government officials? 4 things. First, since we speak about the transformation process, we have to be ambitious in our thinking. How do we want to come out at the end of this transformation process? And we have to seize the opportunities, because we through joint efforts, we could really make this world a better place by using the capabilities we have. So ambition is very important. Believing into the positive force of those transformational changes. The second advice is to have the speed. You cannot catch up with the new technologies. You have to be a front runner, because otherwise you will be on the losing outside. Adaptability is the next factor. And adaptability requires permanent upskilling and reskilling. And the last factor I want to mention is resilience, the capability to bounce back, because there will be certainly what we call the black swans, the unpleasant surprises which will come in our way. So, Minister, dear participants, I wish you a very good meeting. And just as a last point, I want to say the most important factor to master the future is leadership. And for me, I have my own definition. Leadership comprises 5 dimensions: soul, brain, heart, muscles, and good nerves. Let me explain. Soul stands for purpose, for ambition. Brains for professionalism, for permanently upgrading your capabilities. Heart for passion. We have to be passionate about what we are doing, otherwise we will fail. Muscles for the capability to translate our vision into action, into impact. And good nerves to have the resilience to withstand also difficult situations. So I wish you soul, brain, heart, muscles, and good nerves. Thank you.
Professor, a couple of weeks ago in Davos, you met almost all global leaders, government, private sector. What's your takeaway from the meeting this year?
I have seen participants enormously engaged in all the different task forces which we have organized, catalyzed, which we curate. And I think if we look at the future, what is absolutely essential is this cooperation of the different stakeholders of global society. Governments bring the directive power. Business brings the innovative power. Civil society brings the concern power. Academia brings the power of truth. And maybe I should add media, which brings the critical dimension in this dialogue. And we need all those stakeholders to shape together the future.
Thank you. You invented and you wrote, the fourth industrial revolution. What is next? What is next after the fourth industrial revolution? Where your mind take you?
I think the fourth revolution, industrial revolution, will be in our mind for quite some years to come. But what is very essential, my concern, my deep concern, is that those technologies, if we do not work together on a global scale, if we do not formulate, shape together the necessary policies, they will escape our power to master those technologies. Because artificial intelligence, it's relatively easy, let's say, to understand how a computer functions. Of course, if I go back to the first industrial revolution, how a steam engine functions. But how does really quantum computing function? How does artificial intelligence, particularly if it's self-replicating, functions? So one of my concerns is how to shape the necessary policies to make sure that those technologies serve humankind. But the second concern which I have, and where governments have an important role, the change goes so fast in our world, and will go even faster. How can we make sure that the individual, each citizen, doesn't feel overwhelmed by change because he cannot understand really what's going on? And if we do not understand, we become fearful and we react negatively, and we see the first consequences already in many countries with polarization of the public opinion. It has to do with some feeling that we lose control over our own fate. And here I think governments have an important role to explain and to have the ambition and the vision to show that those technologies can serve for the good and are not per se evil.
Finally, thank you, Professor Klaus Schwab, for being with us here. And on behalf of everybody in this summit and the team, thank you for your support for the past 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the topic of our next session is investing in a sustainable future, the role of climate finance, with His Excellency Makhtar Diop, Managing Director of the International Finance Corporation. This session is moderated by Becky Anderson from CNN.
And a very good morning to everybody. Highnesses, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is wonderful to be back here at the World Government Summit this morning, and I am particularly pleased to be leading this discussion on what is one, if not the most pressing issue of our time, and that is climate crisis, and more specifically how mobilizing private capital alongside climate policy is absolutely critical to transforming the world economy and putting us on a path to net zero by 2050. To reach that goal, a transition to net zero, or net zero transition by 2050, as much as $9 trillion in investment is needed every year. That's one estimate. If you're more conservative, you might say it's 6 or 7, but that's an awful lot of money. And 60% of those investment needs are in emerging markets. And these markets are frankly starved of capital. So what are we going to do about it? Well, I'm pleased to have Makhtar Diop, who is the Managing Director of the Private Sector Finance arm of the World Bank, joining us today. Akhtar, it's super to have you. This couldn't be more important. COP28 at the end of this year, we've already heard. Trying to ensure a paradigm shift. So, how do we do that? Let's start with the obvious. Whether it's 9 trillion